Coming up next, the wild story behind one of the most unexpected global hits of the 80s. It was written in a foreign language, which happened to be the singer and writer's native tongue. But when the singer tried to sing it in English, it just didn't work. So they sang it in the foreign language, which was a massive risk for them in America. In fact, it was released twice, and both times it was a total flop. Each time they retooled it, and finally they brought in another singer to bring some soulfulness to this new wave track. Backup singer. Became the innovative blend of classical music and pop culture, and it made the singer the biggest selling artist ever in his homeland. But behind the catchy chorus and infectious beat lies a tale of artistic risk, personal demons, mysterious deaths, and a song that may have spelled the end of the singer, this icon. The drama's coming up next on Professor of Rock. Oh, we got a good one for you. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you wondered what sweater Mr. Rogers was going to change into when he got to his house on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood when you were a kid, a little kid, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. That's a funny one. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Click the red button and click the notification bell so you know when our latest and greatest are coming out. Also, check us out on Patreon and our newest merch below. Love Mr. Rogers. I'm sure you did too. Just a great human being. More than 160 years before the rock era was born, there was a brash young composer from Vienna who rebelled against the patronage system that controlled the arts. He wrote the book on hedonism that was later described as rock and roll excess. While his music became timeless masterpieces, perhaps more appreciated by his future generations than his peers. In 1985, an Austrian singer recorded a song about Vienna's favorite son, calling him a rock idol and lauding him as the first punk ever to set foot on this earth. The legend was Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and the singer was a dapper yet troubled man known as Falco. Rock Me Amadeus! Man, this is such an interesting story. So Falco was born Johann Hans Holzel in Vienna, Austria. When Falco's mother, Maria, was pregnant, she was expecting triplets. However, the pregnancy was a rare case of dizygotic twins, where two of the babies were identical, while the third, who turned out to be Falco, was conceived separately. Tragically, Maria lost the identical twins in the third month. But Falco, he survived. Reflecting on this, Falco once said, and I quote, "3 souls in one chest might sound a bit dramatic, but I can feel them sometimes. And my moodiness, I'd be really up, and then just as quickly, I'll be really down." Remember reading about Elvis talking about how he felt the presence of his twin brother, Jesse Garon, who was stillborn. He died 35 minutes before Elvis was born, and Elvis miraculously survived. It was like a shadow that haunted him, the sense of guilt that he made it and his brother didn't. So Falco was still a child when his father left the family, and he was raised entirely by his mother. Now, when he was 17, he entered military service in the Austrian army for 8 months. And then in the late 70s, he immersed himself in the vibrant Viennese nightlife. It was a scene that was very interesting. It mixed music with erotic dancing, performance art, and a wild blend of political satire and chaos. Now, during this time, he actually played bass guitar in several bands. He used various pseudonyms like John Hudson and John DeFalco. And then from 1977 to early 1979, Falco played bass for the Austrian rock group The Hallucination Company, during which time he adopted the stage name Falco. Falco, very interesting name, that was inspired by East German ski jumper Falco Weissflog. And despite his deep ties to the Viennese underground club scene, Falco stood out with his clean-cut appearance. You know, others embraced a more rugged style, but he sported short comb-back hair, that was a result of his military service, and he paired that with Ray-Ban sunglasses and formal attire. He looked like, Viennese James Bond. Now, when Falco signed on as a solo artist, he kept writing his own music and brought in songwriter Robert Ponger to collaborate. In 1981, he presented what he thought would be his debut single, Helden von Hoyt. This he gave to his manager, Horst Bork. But Bork wasn't impressed and instead felt that the B-side, Der Kommissar, that one had much more potential in his opinion. Falco was a bit unsure. It was a German language song about drug use, blending rap verses with a sung chorus. Now, rap was just starting to gain traction in America, but it was still very rare in Western Europe. Bork insisted, and sure enough, Der Kommissar became a #1 hit in Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and Japan, and it climbed the charts in several other countries too. We covered that one about a year ago. Bork's hunch about the hit potential of Der Kommissar was further validated when the British group After the Fire covered the track. They, of course, sang it in English, and they scored a #5 pop hit on the Billboard Hot 100. Also went to #4 on the mainstream rock chart in 1983. Actually, a couple of interesting side notes about After the Fire. I'm not sure that we covered this when we did it a year ago. When After the Fire released their version of Der Kommissar in '82, it bombed in the UK. And the band had pretty much given up after the song stiffed in their homeland, and during a tour of England with Van Halen, lead singer Andy Pearcy announced that the band was just going to break up. The group's brief success in the States didn't change that fate. Actually, by the time Der Kommissar began to thrive in the States, After the Fire was, as they say in Austria, kaput. Very sad. So our next chapter starts in '83. Falco and producer Robert Ponger headed back to the studio to work on Falco's second album, Junge Reimer. There was a lot of pressure to have a hit song after their previous success, and though it hit #1 in Austria, it did not match the success of Der Kommissar. In response, Falco began experimenting with English lyrics to broaden his appeal. He decided to part ways with Ponger, and he brought in a new production team, the Dutch brothers, Rob and Ferdy Boland. So, interestingly enough, after watching the movie Amadeus, the biopic about Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Rob had the idea for the song, Rock Me Amadeus. He's like, how about a song about Amadeus, the first real rock star the world has ever known? Of course, in the movie, Mozart, played brilliantly by Tom Hulce, is portrayed as a musical prodigy, who lived life in the fast lane, dazzling audiences with his groundbreaking talent till he eventually burned out, much like many of our most beloved musicians of the 20th and 21st centuries. Some things never change. In a way, Mozart set the stage for the hedonistic rock and roll lifestyle that would follow. Now, the plot of Amadeus was mostly centered around the obsessive jealousy of the royal court composer Antonio Salieri, of course played by F. Murray Abraham, another great performance. In the movie, Salieri actually schemes to kill Mozart by poisoning him. But in reality, there's no solid evidence that Salieri was jealous of Mozart. He was already a successful and established composer at that time. There's no truth that he poisoned his talented rival or tried to. But it is Hollywood. And the movie is outstanding if you haven't seen it.
Astounding. It was beyond belief.
Rob Boland called his song Rock Me Amadeus, and he produced a demo and he sent it to Falco to consider recording it. Now, Falco hated the song. He actually passed on it. He was adamant about wanting to record a version of Munich Girls and wasn't interested in a song about Mozart. But Rob didn't give up. He worked Falco's manager relentlessly until he convinced his client to give this song a shot. Rob soon discovered that Falco had some serious issues, though. He recalled that when Falco first came to Amsterdam to meet him, the singer was so drunk when he entered the studio that when he reached out his hand to shake it, the producer actually had to catch Falco with both of his arms to prevent him from falling onto the floor and collapsing altogether. It was pretty bad. Now, Falco sobered up and he went into the studio to work with Rob and Ferdy to create his third studio album, Falco 3. This was in 1985. Rob had written the lyrics for Rock Me Amadeus in German, although Falco was pretty fluent in English. He didn't learn English in school. He actually picked it up by listening and studying pop songs that were sung in English. My understanding is that he tried to sing Rock Me Amadeus in English. It didn't work, so he stuck to German. That was just one of the many things that led to Falco recording the song over and over again and multiple changes on the record before it became a hit. So reinforcing the notion that Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was the world's original rock star, here's an English translation to Rob's lyrics in the first act of Rock Me Amadeus. Kind of funny. He had debts because he drank, but women all loved him anyway. And everybody screamed, "Come and rock me, Amadeus." He was a superstar. He was popular. He was exalted because he had flair. He was a virtuoso. He was a rock idol. And everybody screamed, "Come and rock me Amadeus." It's pretty funny. Rob was able to convince Falco to accept some coaching during the recording of Rock Me Amadeus, something that others found very challenging to do with Falco. Rob was not a technocrat. He didn't pay attention to new technology. But he was a song guy, and he had good instincts about how to make a hit single. He and his brother had already accomplished that feat in 1981 with a song that was called "You're in the Army Now." It was called "Bowlin' and Bowlin'." That was the name of their group. A&M Records bought the rights to Rock Me Amadeus, and the song was released in Europe and in the US. And it tanked. It didn't go anywhere. Rob retooled the song a bit, and A&M re-released the song. The second version flopped. Undaunted, Rob went back to the drawing board and added some new components to the mix that made the song more dynamic, more exciting for radio airplay. Now, the third version of Rock Me Amadeus, known as the Canadian-American mix, that began with an English narration by TV producer Rick McCullough, who outlined the key milestones in Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart's life.
1761. At the age of 5, Amadeus begins composing.
Version 3 also featured Dutch vocalist Lisa Bourret, who brought kind of a soulful Chaka Khan-like flair to the track with "Baby, Baby, Do It To Me, Rock Me" vocal. Now, Lisa Bourret was a highly versatile singer, and she was also known for her ability to create distinct character voices, like Miss Kitty Mouse in Disney's animated film The Great Mouse Detective, which came out the same year. Another key element that Rob added to the third version of Rock Me Amadeus was a saxophone section performed by the late Gerbrand Westveen. Getting Westveen to do it was a delicate proposition. Rob instructed Westveen to play the sax portion in a style that sounded like the theme music for The Muppet Show. Westveen, who was a classically trained musician, was reluctant to take on the quirky novelty approach that Rob requested. He said, "I won't do that. I am a professional." Despite his resistance, so Rob managed to persuade him to give it a try. Rob was happy with what Westveen had played, but when they played back the track, he was very upset, and he told Rob he wouldn't allow it to be released. Now, Rob eventually got his way, and the sax part was added to version 3, and it's one of the big parts of it. The new and improved version of Rock Me Amadeus was released in early 1986. By April of that year, it was an international smash. The single went to #1 in 12 countries, including the UK, Canada, Spain, Japan, West Germany, Falco's homeland of Austria, and of course in America, where more than 2 million copies were sold. Now, prior to Falco's triumph, 99 Luftballons by Nina peaked at #2 on the Billboard Hot 100. This, of course, was in the summer of '83. And that was the highest charting song that was sung in German to that point. However, today, Rock Me Amadeus by Falco is the only German language song to reach the #1 position on the Billboard Hot 100. The album Falco 3 also enjoyed global success. Went to #1 in Austria and Switzerland, #2 in Germany, New Zealand, Sweden, and Norway, and it went to #3 on the Billboard album chart here in the US. The track chosen to follow up the success of Rock Me Amadeus was Vienna Calling. It actually did pretty well. The single broke the top 10 in Austria, Germany, the UK, and other European countries, and it peaked here at #18, I believe, on the Billboard Hot 100, so a two-hit wonder. After scoring back-to-back hits, there were discussions about establishing a more permanent presence in the US by working with American producers and collaborating with American artists. However, these plans fell through, partly due to Falco's personal struggles. At this stage of his career, he was grappling with severe addiction to alcohol and other drugs, serious drugs. Throughout the 80s into the 90s, Falco struggled with heavy dependence on alcohol and cocaine. When he was under the influence, he was unreliable and sometimes abusive. Robin Ferdy Boland remembered that Falco was often so intoxicated that the songwriting process was hindered by his inability to be coherent. I mean, he could barely stand up sometimes. Despite repeated pleas from his manager and collaborators to seek professional help, Falco remained stubbornly resistant to that, and it really cost him in his career. Now, Falco had a few more hits in Europe, but Vienna Calling, that was his last entry in the Hot 100 here. He had a comeback of sorts in '92 with the album Night Flight. That included the single Titanic, but the track was successful in Austria only. His last big hit was Out of the Dark that went to number 2 in 1998, the year that Falco died in a fatal car crash under mysterious circumstances. So in the early 90s, Falco left Vienna and he moved to the Dominican Republic. On the morning of February 6, 1998, Falco finished a physical training session and then he hit up a disco where he started drinking heavily, which was par for the course for this guy. He actually consumed so much alcohol that the waitress eventually cut him off and refused to serve him any more drinks because he was just sloppy drunk. After leaving the disco, though, he stumbled across the parking lot, got into his SUV, where witnesses, including singer Grace Jones, said that he sat for over an hour. At around 4:40 p.m., Falco sped out of the parking lot. He merged onto a highway and drove right into the path of an oncoming bus. The collision caused massive damage to his head and other parts of his body. Actually, Falco was pronounced dead shortly after arriving to the hospital. He was just 2 weeks shy of his 41st birthday. The incident was officially deemed an accident, but authorities stated that Falco's reckless driving caused the violent crash. An autopsy later revealed that Falco had alcohol, cocaine, and cannabis in his system at the time of the crash. Now, given Falco's fragile emotional state at the time of his death, some believed that he intentionally swerved in front of the bus that was traveling at a high speed. Certainly could have been attributed to, his heavy drinking. But that too was a head scratcher because Falco really had high hopes for a new album that he was working on at the time. Now, regardless of whether it was intentional or just an accident from being drunk, Falco was in no condition to be behind the wheel, that's for sure. Mozart's death was also shrouded in mystery. He was only 35 when he died in 1791. The exact cause has never been confirmed. The official record lists the German equivalent of severe military fever, which describes a rash resembling millet seeds, but offers more of a symptom description than a clear diagnosis. Over the years, researchers have proposed more than 100 possible causes of death, including acute rheumatic fever. Rock Me Amadeus is primarily regarded as a novelty song, but it has connected with a new generation of artists in the 90s and beyond. There have been some surprising covers of it, one by the Bloodhound Gang that's really cool, and one by Metallica of all people. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart is worshipped as one of the most innovative composers in history. I mean, it'd take more than 200 hours and over 8 days of nonstop listening to hear Mozart's incredible body of work. It totaled more than 800 pieces of music. Johann Holzel as Falco will mostly be remembered for Rock Me Amadeus, but he too made his mark in history. In addition to Rock Me Amadeus being the only German language song to hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 here in the US, Falco also has earned the distinction of being the best-selling Austrian artist of all time. According to his estate, Falco has sold 20 million albums and 40 million singles around the world. Pretty cool. Hey, leave us a comment about Falco and Rock Me Amadeus. What about this song? Man, this was the song that took over my school when I was a kid. When this hit #1, everybody was singing it. It was like a cultural phenomenon. For about 4 or 5 months in 1986, this was the biggest thing out there. What are your memories of it? Do you remember? Let's have a great discussion below. What do you think about his other work? What else would you like to see from the 80s? 2-hit wonders, 1-hit wonders, whatever. Let's have a great discussion. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe below. We'd love to have you. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.